One of the things I learned very early on as a CEO and an entrepreneur was the fact that I cannot speak the same language to every audience that I'm communicating with. For instance, I can't speak to my staff the way I speak to my vendors, the way I speak to the media. It's all different on how you communicate with them. And I've made all the mistakes in the world, and I'm probably going to be making many more new mistakes. But I finally came out with a philosophy on how to communicate with these 7 different audiences, these types of languages you got to speak. And once you learn how to be aligned with the way you communicate with them, you become more effective. So let me get right into it. First of all, let me give it to you in ranking exactly on which platform is the most important to communicate with, all the way to the highest level. And I'll explain to you why. Now, you may or may not agree with this, but this is a philosophy that works for me. So this is what's worked for me, and I'll share it with you. So 7 platforms, 7 audiences. Number 7 is how you communicate to the media. Okay, it's the least important, but it's still important. Number 6 is how you communicate with your vendors. Number 5 is how you communicate with your investors. Number 4 is how you communicate with your customers and clients. Some people will say, why did Pat put a number 4? I'll explain to you exactly why. Number 3 is how you communicate with your partners, carriers. Number 2 is how you communicate with your staff and your executives. And number 1 is the way you communicate with your sales, on who touches the client the most, how you deal with your sales force. So let me get right into with number 7, which is the media and the public. One of the challenges with media and public is I experienced it early on when we had somebody who endorsed me, and all of a sudden all these different political media platforms started reaching out to me saying, you know, this person's on the back end investing into the company, and we had no idea how to respond because we were just a startup getting started. And even our competitors were loving this because they're saying, oh, you look at what they're doing, and you know, look what's taking place with the company. So we were kind of cornered. We've never gone through this before. And I had to learn how to identify that and sit back instead of taking things personally and trying to defend yourself, learning how to respond to that issue that's come up. So one, the most important advice I can give you on how to deal with media and public is to have your message be aligned with your identity. Have your message be aligned with your identity. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. So the way Donald Trump deals with media works for him. But if you try to deal with media the way Donald Trump deals with media and it's not your identity, you're completely going to flop. And you're going to make a fool out of yourself and your brand and everybody that is also representing the brand the way you're representing the brand. It's important to be aligned. Let me get a little bit deeper so this makes sense to you, because you may say, what's Pat talking about here? Listen, think about it this way. Think about it if I date a girl, okay? And for the first 6 months, I'm acting very, I'm a tough guy, I'm hard, I'm strong, I'm this, I'm that. And then we start dating, and the girl was attracted to the tough guy Pat, right? A year later, 2 years later, and she starts saying, you're too this, you're too that, you're too this. And I start losing my identity and I become this little softie. And then she loses her attraction to me and we're wondering why. But the reality is the initial identity she was turned on by is no longer there. Does that kind of make sense? So you got to make sure you stay the congruent identity that you really are. Imagine Apple. When you and I think about Apple typically launches their phone in September. They come out with a new phone, right? Like let's just say iPhone 7 is going to come out in September. If they don't, the identity is changing. And the way they typically do a launch is hush, hush, you don't announce anything. And then all of a sudden, the most incredible phone is coming out, and then they contact the most biggest famous bloggers that are technology bloggers, and they give them a little bit of a hint. And then they write, and 17 million people go to this technology blogger. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like that, and then they confuse all their competitors, and then they say, the new iPhone that came out, the camera can actually read your feelings and emotions, and then we're like, oh my gosh, this one's a terrible iPhone. We throw this one away, we go to the next one, give this one away back to our grandfather or parents, and then we go get the new one, right? That's their identity. It works for them. Stay true to your identity when dealing with the media. And I hope I made sense in this part, because if you're small right now, you're saying, well, I don't have to deal with this type of stuff. Well, you kind of do when it happens on Yelp or it happens on that's still media to you. So you got to know how to communicate with media and the public. If you did something wrong, always take responsibility for it. It's the first thing that just eliminates all the other person's ready to come attack you. It was our fault. We take full responsibility for this. We're going to get better. Okay. What do I say next? Shoot. They took responsibility, move on. Number six. Number six to me is vendors. The way I communicate with vendors is a complete different way than the way I communicate with partners. And I'll explain to you what I mean by vendors. Vendors to me are, I'm booking an event at a hotel in Las Vegas, and there's this girl that represents us, and she's a vendor, and she's gonna make $25,000 on a deal. I am on her case 24/7 to represent me in such a world-class way. I probably put the most pressure on vendors than anybody else. Highest pressure I put on vendors than anybody else. Why? Because anybody that's become a vendor with me for a long time, you're automatically gonna make a lot of money with me. Guaranteed, you're gonna make a lot of money with me. It's just gonna happen. And a vendor, in my mind, they work from home, they're sitting there, they're with their kids, they're doing all this other stuff as vendors, and then boom, they land a client like ours, and then they're making automatic $40,000 per year, $30,000 per year on one account. So if a vendor I notice gets a little too comfortable with me, I'm moving on. I'm moving on. The types of vendors that I keep to myself for a very, very long time are the types of vendors that don't abuse my relationship. They don't automatically think that I'm a lock because they already have me and they can use me and abuse me all the time. That is not going to happen with vendors at all, ever. It just won't happen on our case. And my staff knows it. My staff knows that when we have vendors, we'll typically have multiple vendors that are shopping for us to give us the best opportunity. Because if you only have one vendor, vendors will typically abuse you if they know they're the only ones there. I don't mean to be negative to vendors. I've just done a lot of stuff with vendors. And I've had great vendors, and I've had vendors that I had to fire and explain to them why I fired them. There's a guy that I've been using in Vegas for longest time, Marshall. He's absolutely phenomenal in what he does. He's a pro, he's a professional. Every year he does my events. When we do AV, it doesn't matter where I'm doing it. I trust this guy's feedback because of the way he does certain things. I have a lot of value for him. Now, if all of a sudden he tries to abuse a relationship, obviously we'll go elsewhere. But I trust his abilities as a vendor on what he does for us. So I use him every single time we have an event. We pick our dates based on his availability because he's a pro that we trust. So vendors' relationship to me is pressure, performance, expectations high. Just like attorneys, I want my attorneys to do their best for me. I want my accountants to do their best for me. I expect them to work very hard. I expect the attorneys to do their part. These are vendors to me. Now, if a law firm eventually becomes my general counsel and my legal counsel, now that becomes a partner. Vendor to me is somebody I use every once in a while, but not on a monthly basis. Maybe I use them, once every 3 months or something like that. That's a vendor. Partner is a complete different story, and I'll explain to you exactly how I treat partners. Number 5 is how you communicate with investors. Investors have one thing in mind. Unless if the investor is your mom and dad, or it's an uncle, they also care about you, right? They kind of want to see you win. Or if the investor is a former mentor you work with for 10, 15 years and they invested in your business, but they also want to see you win, they want to see you happy, that's a different story. Take those out. Investors care about one thing and one thing only. How much money you're going to bring back to them. That's it. They care about your health, but it's not even on their top 10 list. The only reason they care about your health is for you not to die so they can get their money back. They care about your marriage. The only reason they care about your marriage is because they don't want your marriage to flop because it's going to disrupt the business. That's the investor. They care about whether you're happy or not because they care about your joy, happiness, all that other stuff, because if you're happy, you're going to perform better and get better results for them, right? That's how they think. So when you speak to investors, it's all logic. How's the wife doing? How's the family doing? All that small talk, they don't care. They don't care. I mean, to them, it's a complete different language. And I like that language because to me, it is a very honest language. It's actually a very simple language. It's not a complicated language. It's purely a logical language you're having with investors. So the more you identify from that side, the more you're able to communicate with them effectively. Next, to me, is customers. You know the whole idea about customers are always right? It is pretty accurate on the customers being always right, but there are sometimes that customers will like to abuse and do whatever they can, especially nowadays, to just get out there, and people have access to anything. where they can go out there and bash the world about you. I heard a stat one time that said if you do something good, people tell 3 people. But if you do something bad, people tell 11 people if you do something bad. And I understand, I agree with that as well. So customers are always right, except for the 1 in 100 instance that they're just completely disgruntled and they're negative, and no matter where they go, you can't ever please them. And you still have to figure out a way to work with them as well. We've had to work with many customers that they're not having a good day. One of our agents didn't treat them well, and we have to get on the phone, be on the phone with them for an hour. And sometimes I have to get on the phone, and I got on the phone with one guy, and we got on the phone, and he says, you know why I didn't like you? Listen to this. This was a conversation I had with this guy 5.5 years ago. He said, I don't like you. I said, why is that? He says, because you believe in capitalism. I said, yes, I do. He heard me give a talk on capitalism. I said, I lived in Iran. I kind of have lived on the complete opposite end of capitalism, and I prefer capitalism. That's why I came to America as an immigrant. Well, I can't stand what you. And he was part of this organization that was a communistic organization, and he hated me. And finally, I got on the phone with him for an hour. I said, what's the issue? Tell me. And he went through. So this was a very random, weird call. We had a 45-minute conversation about politics. Tell me what you think about this. Why do you believe this way? Do you know this president this? And I said, listen, most of the stuff I'm agreeing with you. The only thing I'm not agreeing with you is the fact that you think every business owner is a crook and they're trying to do bad things out there. You work for P.F. Chang's. They pay your salary. Imagine if there was no P.F. Chang's. I'd work for another company. But regardless, you're going to work for a capitalist. So we had this conversation, and I laughed, we kid, we joke. We had a great, and then we got off the phone. He says, I'm good, great. 3 years later, he sends me a message on Facebook after my video goes viral, and he says, hey, I remember when you and I spoke. It's amazing to see you doing very well. I am now a capitalist. I mean, it was the most, and now we have a relationship together. So customers are right. You need to make sure you hear them out because everyone's experience may be different. But to me, I can do a lot more to make the customer's experience better if I take care of my top 3. And I'll explain to you why this is. Number 3 audience to speak the language to is partners. Partners to me are very important. I, as an insurance company, I have a lot of carriers. So some of them may be carriers that we have that we can sell, whether it's nationwide, whether it's National Life or Allianz or all these other companies. And then I have partners. I have partners that I deal with that, whether it's Nationwide, AIG or Foresters or whoever it is. I have partners, right? There are carriers and then there are partners. Those who become partners, they are in it with you. They are wanting, now this doesn't mean one day they can't turn around, because you know how partners sometimes they bring a new regime and everything changes and they're not. Partnership falls secondary or third, and you got to go find somebody that wants to be a partner. But for the most part, when there's a partnership, things are in a place where both want each other to win in a big way. And the way I handle my partners is this. Look, we both have a couple things in common. We need to make sure our customers are happy. We need to make sure our reps are happy. If we can have our customers and our reps happy, you and I are happy. Yes. Okay. So what can we do to make customers' experience better? For instance, if I'm Zappos and I'm selling shoes and I have 20 contracts with shoe companies, but I have partners, and one of the ones, I'm just throwing a name out there, is Cole Haan. Cole Haan and I have a very strong relationship together because they're a partner. I'm going to make sure as Zappos that Cole Haan delivers good products to my customers. Because if they deliver good products to my customers, they're happy. I need to make sure how Cole Haan treats the customer when the customer sends a shoe back and it's missing a sole, or it's missing whatever, or something's not break, sole doesn't, it's broken, something happened, it's torn, all this up. I need to make sure how they treat my customers, because if my customer, I'm representing them as a partner, I need to make sure my customer is happy with my partner. So I spend more time making sure the partner treats the customer right so the customer doesn't call me for a complaint. This is why the customer to me is number 4. I put the other 3 at the top because customer touches them more than the customer is going to touch me. I need to make sure the customer, she is extremely satisfied with the partner. That's why partner is number 3. Number two is, so the partner part, I literally explain partner like, listen, we are a team. We're on the same page. We need to make this thing better. What do you need to do to get better? What do we need to get better? The more transparency and honesty you are with me, the more we can improve. But I'm going to hold you accountable as well for you to improve. So let's have a monthly conference call. We know where you're at. We know what you're doing. Boom, both of us are getting better. 2, Number two is staff and executives. Staff and executives, on how you communicate with staff and executives. So remember, staff and executives generally, they're on salary based, and then you have sales that's not, they're on commission based. So staff and executive, they have health, all this other stuff that's taken care of, and they have a salary, and then they have an environment, and their hours are pretty predictable hours for the most part. I expect a lot from my executives. A lot from my executives. A lot from my executives. If someone works closely with me and they're an executive, they will generally tell you, Patrick is in our case until he trusts us. And it's literally the way it is. Once I trust your ability that you have subscribed to being a leader in life, I leave you alone. And I simply challenge you and mentor you, and then you give me direction and ideas, and I challenge you to improve. And next project, what do we need to do? I need direction from you. We're going back and forth, right? But I need to know that I trust you as a leader. So I'm pushing you as an executive harder than anybody else to make you become a leader. The moment you're a leader, my staff's going to be led by you. So I need to make sure you become a leader so you're leading everybody else with the example you're setting to them. So there's an expectation. I'm doing a video that should be launched in the next couple weeks, and that video is going to be 6 things I expect from my executives, and expect that video to come out as well, so you'll find out a little bit more my expectation of my executives. And with my staff, I'm touching all my staff members, hey, encouraging them, how are you doing, what's going on, keep it going, you're playing an important role, we need to keep developing, we need to keep getting better, what is your project this week, what are you doing, what's going on with this? We're working that language as well, but there's a high expectations from the executives for them to deliver and for them to perform. And I'm constantly teaching the executives and our staff members that no one's more important without the sales force, without the customers. If we don't take care of those two, we don't have a job and we don't exist. Make sense? If the sales force is being taken care of and if the customers are being taken care of, we have a job. How well of a job are we doing there? We're doing good. Excellent. Let's get better. Okay. And the last one is, which is the most important language you'll speak to an audience, is your sales force. And let me explain to you why sales force. The reason why I have meetings here with our staff, and let's just say staff's going to say, oh, you know what, man, I want to go home early and I want to go out there and do this and I want to go out there and do, and I'm like, listen, you've been going home a lot early the last few weeks on Fridays. And what do you think we are? You think we're a $600 billion company where corporates go and golf from Friday, Saturday, Sunday? No, we're trying to be a $600 billion company. We're not a $600 billion company. And you're acting like you've already made it. And that's not a leader. That's an entitled person already. You want to golf? You go golf on Sundays. That's totally fine with me. I don't care if you want to golf, but we're building something special here. And so I will always remind our staff that salespeople are in the streets getting rejected. They're selling, they're marketing, they're knocking on doors, they're going to family's house, and they're constantly hearing the magical words, N-O, no, 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 no. We have to be the biggest cheerleaders and make everything be easier for them. They need to be tough, because when it comes down to sales, I'm not the one that's necessarily, I'm a driver with my sales guys, but I also understand, because I've been selling all my life, so I know exactly what it is to go door to door. I know what it is to work from 6 o'clock in the morning till midnight, 6-7 days a week. I know exactly what it is to work 100 hours a week. We still do it till today when we're working with the company. So I love working with my sales guys, because if I make sure my sales guys are trained well, my customers are happy. If I teach my sales guys to have high expectations and a bigger vision and think bigger on what they can do and make more money, that means we can expand the company and hire more to give them more support. If we get our sales guys to work on becoming leaders and becoming independently leading their businesses, reading books, developing themselves all around, they grow and everybody else grows in the company. If we have a spirit of competition and we stay competitive and edgy in the sales side, we know exactly how to talk amongst other competitors when the competitors want to bash us and say why they're better than us, et cetera, which is a part of the world we're in. As an entrepreneur and a businessman, you got to learn how to put your hands up sometimes and just brawl with competitors. It is going to happen. Sometimes you got to build bridges, but sometimes they don't want to build bridges, and you got to say, let's go toe to toe and see what we can do and who can deliver better for the clients. But to me, at the top of my list are salespeople, because if customers are not happy and I'm on the phone with them for 1 hour, they're typically complaining about who? 2 people. They're typically complaining about the partner that didn't give them the service with the product that was sold to them by a who? a salesperson that didn't give them the type of results that they want. And if they were to call in our home office to talk to our staff members and executives, they didn't get the customer service they want. This is why customer to me is number 4, because I need to take care of my right partnership and pick them correctly. I need to make sure my sales reps are treating my customers right. And I need to make sure that the staff and executives, every time they touch a customer, they're feeling better about themselves, not walking away saying, I'm unhappy with my experience that I had. That's why I put sales reps all the way at the top of my list. So when you are learning how to communicate with these guys, by the way, I can talk on this subject. Literally, I can do an 8-hour talk on this subject right now, just do Q&As all day long, and I can go deeper in this subject over, what about if they do this? What about if they say this? What if the partner does this? What about if the vendor does this? What about if the attorney and the lawyer does it? When do you change this? This is an 8-hour subject I'm putting together, and I don't know, 20, Paul, how many minutes is it already right now? Is it like 20 minutes or 19 minutes or 22 minutes? Whatever the timeline is. In 20 minutes. We're going to get deeper into this on future projects that we're going to have. But at this point, I just want to put this in the back of your mind when you're thinking about how to communicate with people. Let some of these ideas help you in communicating with these different departments, whether it's the public, whether it's vendors, whether it's investors, whether it's customers, partners, staff executives, salespeople. Learn how to communicate this language, and you'll do better with them. Paul, send me my pillow, man. Send me my pillow real quick, buddy. Hey, guys, we got to get to 100,000 subscribers. I've been getting a lot of great messages from some of you guys strategizing and helping us out. We want to get this channel, which I believe is the #1 channel on YouTube for entrepreneurs. I really believe that. I've sized up my competition. I look at exactly what type of content they put together. I believe this is the #1 channel on YouTube for entrepreneurs that want to learn how-to principles, not just motivational. There's a lot of great sites on motivational. There's a lot of great YouTube channels that create incredible content for motivation that you can go to. But then when I want to know, how do I do this? There's not a lot of how-tos. We are the #1 how-to channel on YouTube for entrepreneurship. I believe more than any other channel on YouTube, and we're just getting started. We need your help to get to 100,000 subs. I think right now we're at 44,000 and some change on YouTube subs, and we want to get to 100,000 by August 31st. I am launching a big project in August that we're going to launch. It's going to be an international project that we're launching, bought a domain for $100,000, and we'll be launching that here pretty soon. So we need your help to help us get to 100,000 subs by August 31st. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, I think you can subscribe right here to the channel. If you're watching this video on a complete different platform and it's not my website or YouTube, you can always come back to patrickbetdavid.com. Boom. Give me the ringtone. There you go. And then if you have any questions and comments about this topic, which I'm sure you will, post your comments on the bottom. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.